Maggie O'Connor stood on the porch of the weathered farmhouse, watching the last rays of the setting sun paint the Kansas sky in brilliant streaks of orange and pink. The warm breeze carried the sweet scent of ripening wheat, a reminder of the harvest to come. At 55, Maggie thought she'd left her old life behind when she moved out to the quiet rural town, seeking a fresh start after her divorce. But the past has a way of catching up when you least expect it. The screen door creaked open behind her, jolting Maggie from her reverie. She turned to see her tenant, Sam Turner, stepping out to join her. At 30, he was young enough to be her son, but there was a world weariness in his deep blue eyes that spoke of hard-won wisdom beyond his years. "Beautiful evening," Sam remarked, leaning against the porch railing. "Thought I'd come out and catch the sunset before hitting the books again." Maggie smiled. Sam was a graduate student at the local university, pursuing a degree in agricultural science. He'd rented the spare room above the garage a few months back, a quiet, respectful presence on the farm. "You work too hard," she chided gently. "Don't forget to take a break now and then. Academia will still be there in the morning." Sam ducked his head, a rueful grin tugging at his lips. "I just want to make a difference, you know? Find ways to help farmers like you make the most of your land. Leave something good behind." Maggie's heart clenched at the earnestness in his tone. Driven by a passion to better the world, to build a meaningful life, Sam reminded her so much of herself at that age, before the realities of adulthood had tempered her idealism. She reached out, giving his arm a maternal pat. "You will, Sam, I have no doubt, but don't forget to live a little along the way, okay?" Their companionable silence was shattered by the roar of an engine coming up the long dirt drive. Maggie frowned. She wasn't expecting any visitors, and sudden appearances were rare this far out from town. A sleek black car rolled to a stop in front of the house, kicking up a cloud of dust. The driver's door swung open, and a tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp suit stepped out. Maggie's breath caught in her throat. Even after all these years, she would know that silhouette anywhere. "Jack?" she whispered, scarcely believing her eyes. Jack Hawkins, her ex-husband, looked up at the sound of her voice. A slow, familiar smile spread across his handsome face as he took in the sight of her. "Hello, Maggie. It's been a long time." Maggie gripped the porch railing, her knuckles turning white. What was he doing here, after all this time? Their divorce had been amicable enough, but they'd gone their separate ways over a decade ago. She'd built a new life here, one free from the painful memories of their shared past. Sam glanced between them, sensing the sudden tension in the air. "I'll just head inside," he murmured, slipping tactfully back into the house. Jack approached the porch, his expensive loafers crunching on the gravel path. "You look good, Mags. Farm life agrees with you." Maggie crossed her arms, steeling herself against the old, familiar tug of attraction. Jack had always been a charmer, with his rakish grin and smooth, honeyed voice. It was part of what had drawn her to him in the first place, back when they were young and foolish and believed love could conquer all. "What are you doing here, Jack?" The easy smile slipped from his face, replaced by a look of uncharacteristic seriousness. "I needed to see you, to talk to you. Can I come in?" Against her better judgment, Maggie found herself nodding. She led him into the cozy farmhouse kitchen, automatically moving to put a kettle on for tea. Some habits died hard. Jack settled at the worn wooden table, his designer suit incongruous against the homespun charm of gingham curtains and hand-stitched tea towels. "I'm dying, Maggie." The blunt words hit her like a punch to the gut. Maggie whirled to face him, eyes wide. "What?" Jack scrubbed a hand over his face, looking suddenly older, wearier. "Cancer, stage 4. The doctors say I've got 6 months, maybe a year with treatment. But we both know I've never been one for hospitals and chemo." Maggie sank into the chair beside him, her mind reeling. Jack, her Jack, the invincible force of nature she'd once loved more than life itself, was dying. It seemed impossible, a cruel cosmic joke. I don't know what to say." Jack reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His skin was warm, the calluses from their shared years on the farm long since softened by his white-collar life in the city. "I know it's a lot to take in. Believe me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it myself. But when I got the diagnosis, I realized there's still so much I want to do, Mags. So much I need to make right, starting with us. Maggie stiffened, pulling her hand from his grasp. Jack, we've been over this. What's done is done. We've both moved on. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect to pick up where we left off. A pained smile flickered across Jack's face. I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, not after the way things ended. But I'm not here to rehash the past or beg for another chance. I'm here because I need your help. Maggie's brow furrowed. My help? With what? Jack took a deep breath as if steeling himself. I want to make amends, Maggie, for all the hurt I caused, for the promises I broke. I want to do something good with the time I have left, something that matters. He reached into his suit jacket, pulling out a folded sheaf of papers. I've started a foundation, the Hawkins Trust. We'll be funding agricultural research, providing grants for small farms, investing in sustainable practices. A way to give back, to make a difference in the lives of people like us, people who work the land. Maggie stared at the papers, at the neat columns of figures and the official-looking logo. It was so like Jack, to charge ahead with grand plans and noble intentions. But something nagged at the back of her mind, a sliver of suspicion that wouldn't quite let go. It sounds wonderful, Jack, she said carefully. Truly it does. But what does all this have to do with me? Jack leaned forward, his blue eyes intent. I want you to run it, Maggie. The trust, the foundation, all of it. I need someone I can rely on, someone with the knowledge and the heart to make this work. It has to be you. Maggie shook her head, a bitter laugh bubbling up in her throat. You left, Jack. You walked away from the farm, from our marriage, from everything we'd built together. And now, what? You expect me to just drop my life and clean up your messes one last time? Jack flinched. Regret etched into the lines of his face. I know I have no right to ask, but this isn't about me, Mags. It's about leaving something behind, something that will carry on long after I'm gone. A legacy of hope and healing. Please, just think about it. Maggie closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the swirl of emotions. Anger, grief, the faintest flicker of yearning for the life they'd once dreamed of building. When she opened them again, Jack was watching her, a silent plea in his gaze. I'll think about it, she said at last. That's all I can promise. Relief washed over Jack's face. He stood, gathering the papers and tucking them back into his jacket. Thank you, Maggie. That's all I ask. He hesitated, then reached out to brush a tender knuckle down her cheek. For what it's worth, I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it. With that, he was gone, striding out of the farmhouse and back to his waiting car. Maggie watched him go, a maelstrom of conflicting feelings churning in her chest. In the days that followed, Maggie grappled with Jack's revelation and his plea for help. She pored over the foundation documents, seeking answers in the neat rows of budgets and project proposals. On a sunny afternoon, she found herself wandering the farm, seeking solace in the quiet rhythms of the land. Lost in thought, she didn't hear Sam's approach until he spoke. Penny for your thoughts? Maggie started, then offered a rueful smile. Oh, they're worth a good deal more than that, I'm afraid. Sam fell into step beside her, his hands shoved into the pockets of his faded jeans. I couldn't help but overhear some of what your ex-husband said, he admitted. Sounds like he's in a tough spot. Maggie sighed, tipping her face up to the warm Kansas sun. That's putting it mildly. Jack was always a force to be reckoned with, but this... I never saw it coming. What will you do? Sam asked quietly. Maggie paused, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. The foundation, the trust ... IT quote, S, a chance to make a real difference, to help people like us, who pour their hearts into the land. I could do a lot of good, but you're not sure you can trust him, finished, understanding in his eyes. Maggie nodded, a lump rising in her throat. We loved each other. Once, or I thought we did, but in the end, we wanted different things. He couldn't wait to shake the dust of this place off his shoes, to chase bigger dreams, and I just wanted to build a life, a home, real and lasting.
quiet for a moment, considering maybe this is his way of trying to try, he said at last. A way to even if he couldn't stay. Maggie looked at him, struck by the wisdom in his words. Here was a man who knew the value of legacy, of leaving something behind. A man who reminded her in so many ways of the person she'd once hoped Jack would be. In that moment, the last piece of the puzzle figured into place. What she had to do. 2 weeks later, Maggie stood on the stage of a university auditorium, a sea of faces looking back at her. Farmers and researchers, students and faculty, all gathered to witness the launch of the agricultural trust. Sat in the front row, his face pale and drawn, but his eyes bright with pride as Maggie took the podium. Agriculture is more than just a way of life, she began, her voice out clear and strong. Sacred trust, a promise passed down through generations, to nurture the land, to leave this world a little better than we found it. She spoke of the challenges facing modern farmers, of the need for innovation and support for a return to the sustainable practice of the past. She outlined research grants, educational programs, a network of resources, and mentorship for small farms. This foundation is a legacy, Maggie said, her gaze finally back in the legacy of hope, of resilience, on between the land and those who work it. It is a promise to honor the past as we build a brighter future together. As the applause washed over her, Maggie felt a sense of purpose settle into her bones. This was her life's work, the culmination of everything she'd fought for and believed in. And though the road ahead would be hard, she knew she wasn't walking it alone. In the reception after, Jack found her, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You are magnificent up there, Megs," he said hoarsely. "I always knew you'd do great things. This is beyond anything I could have imagined." Maggie smiled, taking his hand. "We did this, Jack. You and me. Maybe we couldn't make our marriage work, but this is a legacy we can both be proud of." Jack nodded, squeezing. "I should have been there, Maggie. Should have been the man you needed, the partner you deserved. I'm sorry it took me so long to see what really mattered." Maggie shook her head, tears in her eyes. "We can't pass, Jack, but we can choose what we do with it. We have, and this right here, this." As the months passed, Maggie threw herself into her new role as director of the Hawkins Trust. She crisscrossed the state, meeting with farmers and researchers, forging partnerships and rallying support. Challenging but infinitely rewarding. A chance to make a tangible difference in the lives of the people she'd always felt called to serve. Through it all, Sam was a constant presence at her side, a sounding board, a source of quiet strength and unwavering support. As they worked long hours poring over grant proposals and Maggie felt a bond growing between them, a kinship of shared purpose, unspoken understanding. Rejoiced in the Trust's successes, Maggie couldn't escape the shadow of Jack's illness. She watched him grow weaker, his once robust frame ravaged by the cancer that ate away at him. In stolen moments between treatments, they would sit together on the farmhouse porch, sipping tea and talking of everything and savoring the precious left. One crisp autumn evening, the sun dipped over the golden field. Jack, a wistful smile on his lips. "I wish we'd had more time," he said softly. "More time to get it right, to build the life we always dreamed of." Maggie took his hand hard, the bittersweet mist of love. "We have now, Jack, and we're making the most of it every single day. The trust, the work we are doing, that is the life we always wanted, the legacy behind.
Jack nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Promise me you'll keep going, Maggie, that you'll see this through no matter what happens. The world needs people like you, with fire in their bellies and love in their hearts. Maggie swallowed hard past the lump in her throat. I promise, Jack, I won't let you down, not this time. A month later, on a gray and drizzling morning, Maggie stood beside an open grave, watching as Jack's casket was lowered into the earth. The funeral was a small, quiet affair, a gathering of the people who'd loved him best. Sam stood at her elbow, a steadfast presence in her grief. As the mourners dispersed, Maggie lingered, her eyes fixed on the freshly turned earth. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to find Sam watching her, compassion etched into every line of his face. He was so proud of you, Sam said softly. Of the woman you are, the work you're doing. He told me once that loving you was the best thing he ever did, even if he didn't always show it the way he should have. Maggie's breath caught, tears spilling down her cheeks. I loved him too, she whispered. Despite everything, a part of me always will. Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. He'll always be with you, Maggie, in the work, in the legacy you're building together. And you're not alone. You have so many people who believe in you, who'll stand with you every step of the way. Maggie looked up at him, something shifting in her heart. In the warmth of Sam's gaze, she saw a glimmer of hope, the promise of a future she'd never dared to imagine, a future built on friendship and shared purpose, on the unshakable foundation of the life she'd built for herself. Thank you, Sam, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For everything. I couldn't do this without you. Sam smiled, his hand finding hers and twining their fingers together. You'll never have to. Together, they walked out of the cemetery and into the waiting sunlight, ready to face whatever the future held. And though grief still lingered, Maggie felt a flicker of peace in her heart, a quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. In the years that followed, Maggie and Sam worked tirelessly to grow the Hawkins Trust into a beacon of hope and progress for farmers across the country. They partnered with universities and government agencies, lobbied for policy changes and funding initiatives, poured their hearts into building a sustainable future for American agriculture. And, as they worked side by side, the bond between them deepened, blossoming into a love that felt as natural and inevitable as the turning of the seasons. It was a love built on respect and partnership, on shared dreams and unwavering support. A love that healed old wounds and opened new doors. As the Hawkins Trust flourished under Maggie and Sam's leadership, so too did their relationship. What had begun as a friendship forged in shared purpose gradually blossomed into something deeper. A love that felt as natural and inevitable as the turning of the seasons. It wasn't a love of grand gestures or sweeping passion, but of quiet moments and steadfast support. It was Sam bringing Maggie coffee on late nights spent poring over grant proposals, his gentle encouragement chasing away the doubts that sometimes crept in. It was Maggie teaching Sam the secrets of her grandmother's famous apple pie, laughter and flour dusting the sunlit kitchen. It was long walks through the golden fields, hands entwined as they talked of their hopes and dreams for the future. There were challenges, of course. Navigating the complexities of a relationship while leading a growing organization was no easy feat. There were long hours and difficult decisions, moments of frustration and fatigue. But through it all, Maggie and Sam stood united, their bond a source of strength and solace. As the years passed, the trust grew beyond anything Maggie could have imagined. They expanded their programs, partnering with schools to develop agricultural education initiatives, launching a network of farmers markets to connect growers directly with their communities. They became a leading voice in the sustainable agriculture movement, their work recognized and celebrated on a national stage. And through it all, Maggie felt the weight of Jack's legacy, a constant presence guiding her path. She saw him in the sparkle of a young researcher's eyes as they made a breakthrough in crop rotation techniques, in the proud smile of a farmer surveying a bumper harvest grown with the trust's support. She felt him in the quiet moments, too, when the grief would sneak up on her, sharp and bittersweet. In those times, it was Sam who held her close, his steadfast love a balm to her aching heart. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped low over the fields, Maggie and Sam sat on the old farmhouse porch, hands curled around steaming mugs of cider. It had been a long day of budget meetings and strategic planning sessions, but the weariness fell away as they settled into the familiar comfort of each other's company. Sam turned to Maggie, his blue eyes warm and serious. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about the future, about us." Maggie felt her breath catch, a flutter of anticipation in her chest. "Oh?" Sam set his mug aside and took her hands in his. "Maggie, you're the most incredible woman I've ever known. Your strength, your compassion, your unwavering dedication to making the world a better place. I'm in awe of you every single day." Tears pricked Maggie's eyes at the raw emotion in his voice. "Sam, I know our path hasn't been easy," he continued, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her wrist. "We've both had our share of heartache, of loss, but through it all, you've been my rock, my partner in every sense of the word. I can't imagine facing this life without you by my side." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maggie's heart leapt into her throat as he opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring, a single emerald flanked by 2 small diamonds. "Margaret Elizabeth O'Connor," Sam said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Of building a life and a future together, come what may?" Tears spilled down Maggie's cheeks as she nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Sam slid the ring onto her finger, his own eyes bright with joy and love. And as he drew her into a kiss, deep and tender and full of promise, Maggie felt a sense of rightness settle into her bones. This was where she was meant to be, in the arms of the man she loved, building a legacy of hope and healing. They were married the following spring, in a simple ceremony in the farmhouse garden. Surrounded by friends and family, by the colleagues and partners who'd become like kin, they pledged their lives and their love to one another. As Maggie looked out over the sea of smiling faces, she felt Jack's presence, a whisper of warmth and pride on the breeze. In the years that followed, Maggie and Sam faced triumphs and trials, joys and sorrows. They welcomed children, a son and a daughter, who filled the old farmhouse with laughter and light. They expanded the trust internationally, partnering with organizations around the globe to promote sustainable agriculture and rural development. And through it all, their love remained a constant, a foundation as solid and enduring as the earth beneath their feet. There were moments, of course, when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, when the challenges seemed insurmountable, the problems too complex to solve. But in those moments, Maggie would think back to that long-ago conversation with Jack, to the promise she'd made to carry on his legacy, to see their shared vision through. And with Sam by her side, with the trust and the love of her family and friends, she found the strength to keep going, to face each new day with courage and conviction. As Maggie grew older, her hair turning silver, and her hands weathered by years of work and wisdom, she often reflected on the twists and turns of her life's path, the love she'd found and lost and found again, the purpose she'd discovered in the soil and the seeds. She marveled at the way a single decision, a single moment of bravery, could ripple out and touch so many lives. And on quiet evenings, when the sun dipped low and the crickets sang in the fields, Maggie would sit on the old farmhouse porch, Sam's hand warm in hers. They would talk of the early days, of the struggles and the breakthroughs, the laughter and the tears. They would speak of Jack, of the man who'd loved Maggie fiercely if imperfectly, whose dying wish had planted the seeds of a legacy that would endure for generations. In those moments, Maggie felt a deep sense of peace, of gratitude for the extraordinary journey she'd been granted. She knew that her life, her love, her work were all part of a tapestry larger than herself, a story woven through time and space, through heartache and hope. And as the years turned and the seasons changed, as her children grew and the trust flourished, Maggie held fast to that truth. That in the end, a life well lived was a life of purpose and passion, of courage in the face of adversity and love in the face of loss. That the true measure of a legacy lay not in accolades or achievements, but in the hearts and minds touched, the seeds of change sown. For Maggie, that legacy was the Hawkins Trust, the organization she and Jack had dreamed into being, nurtured with sweat and tears and unwavering dedication. It was the farmers and researchers, the students and educators whose lives had been transformed by their work. It was the land itself, the rich earth and rolling fields, the precious resources sustained and protected for generations to come. But more than that, Maggie's legacy was a story of resilience and redemption, of second chances and unbreakable bonds. It was the love she'd found with Sam, a partnership of equals built on respect and shared purpose. It was the family they'd created together, the children who would carry on their values and their vision. It was the friendships forged in the trenches of change-making, the allies and advocates who'd become like kin. And at the very heart of it all was Maggie herself, the girl from the Kansas farm who'd weathered heartbreak and hardship, who'd found her calling in the soil and her strength in the love of those around her. The woman who dared to dream a better world into being, to plant seeds of hope in the face of doubt and adversity. As the sun set on the golden fields and the farmhouse lights blinked on one by one, Maggie knew that her story, her legacy, would live on. In the work of the trust, in the love of her family, in the very earth beneath her feet. A testament to the power of resilience and redemption, of purpose and passion, of a life lived in service to something greater than herself. And with that knowledge, that deep, abiding peace, Maggie turned her face to the setting sun, ready for whatever the next chapter might bring, secure in the love and the legacy she'd built, one seed, one day, one dream at a time.